Brooke here with a quick message for my transfer applicants. If you are currently attending another college or university and want to transfer to USC Viterbi, attend one of our advisement sessions. We host them on select Fridays. You can find more info at viterbi.link/events. That's VITERBI.link/events. And don't worry about rushing to submit your application. The common application for transfer students isn't due until February 15th. Now, let's get that podcast started.
This is Viterbi Voices.
Coming to you from the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering.
We're here to give you the inside scoop on research, classes, student life, and so much more.
All of these shared by students, faculty, alumni, and other members of the USC community.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Viterbi Voices. As usual, I am one of your hosts. My name is Paul Ledesma, Executive Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
Hello, everyone. I'm your other host. My name is Safia Patel. I'm a senior studying computer science, and I'm doing my master's in engineering management.
Safia, I think we're upping the energy level a little bit. It's a dial up from last time.
We're finally not recording in the AM. Like it's 2:30 p.m. I've gone out of bed today before recording. I've spoken to people today. We're doing good. We're doing good.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad you're here and you're ready to go. And in addition to that, we have a new co-host to the podcast, a new mystery guest. Cecilia, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Cecilia. I'm a sophomore studying electrical and computer engineering here at USC.
And a little bit more about yourself, Cecilia. Why don't you tell, we have tens of listeners out there that are listening to us. You want to tell them where you're from and a little bit about you and what you do here on campus?
Yeah, so I actually came to USC. I used to live in Delaware, Ohio, so it's a bit of a move. Around campus, I'm involved in a couple of things. I'm a member of the avionics team for our rocket propulsion lab here at USC, which is really fun. We just actually launched a couple weeks ago, and we beat a world record. It was very exciting. We went to space.
For the second time, the team to go to space for the second time, right? The only team to ever reach space, and you've done it twice.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then for other involvements, I'm a CP for EE 109, so Introduction to Embedded Systems. I love it so much. It's so fun. I get to help students out with their lab. And I get to meet a lot of people and work with some of my friends that I took 109 with. It's just a great opportunity to work with my 109 professors again as well. And then lastly, I used to do Curve. So I've had experience doing research. I got to dive a little bit into autonomous vehicles, which was really fun. And then I also had some summer research experience doing computer vision. So a lot of stuff in ECE that I really got to dive into outside of coursework.
That's great. Cool. And you said you're from Ohio. But you said, what was the name of the city?
In Delaware.
Delaware?
Just Delaware.
So you're from a city that's the name of another state?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it was super interesting because I heard it. I was like, I'm from Delaware, Ohio. I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't know there's a city named Delaware. That's amazing. Where is Delaware located in Ohio?
So if you guys know Columbus, it is like 20 minutes north of Columbus.
Okay. All right, very cool. And
I'm searching it on a map right now.
You're Googling it up. When I'm sure you have lots of questions about this, and people talk about it all the time. But I'm curious, just in general, what are some of the biggest differences between kind of where you grew up in Ohio in general to being in Los Angeles in California?
That's actually a great question because that brings up a whole nother thing, which is that I lived in Ohio for only 2 years. And since I'm 19, that's not much of my life. But I mean, comparing Ohio to other places I've lived, I was born in Georgia. I lived in Washington. I've lived in California before. I lived in Virginia. And then Ohio.
All over.
Yes.
All over. Yeah. So it's good to probably compare all those places then. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was really different. I think I was used to moving a lot already. But then moving to Ohio, I don't know. It's just way more empty, kind of. But I liked it. I liked driving there. That's one thing that I really liked.
Nice.
One-way roads. Open
it.
roads. Yes, open
Open
roads.
roads. Open roads. And so your family is still there. So like on breaks and things, you go back to Ohio?
My family's actually in Panama.
In
So
Oh,
Panama. Okay.
wow.
on breaks, I go to Panama. Yeah.
Okay. So what have we left out? Because you were in Ohio, but you're not anymore. So now, but were they always in Panama? What, piece
Um,
this together for me.
yeah. So the second that I came to Los Angeles to go to USC, they moved out of Ohio.
Are you the youngest child?
No, I'm not. I'm the
Oh, okay,
oldest.
okay. Oh, no way. Oh my gosh.
So they decided they wanted to go to Panama. Well, they actually moved to Colombia. They were living in Colombia for a bit. So my freshman
Mhm.
year, I was going back to Colombia, but now for my sophomore year, I'm going back to Panama because they moved to Panama.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
It's a
Always
lot.
in a new
Yes.
location. Oh my gosh. So your siblings go to school in Panama now?
Yeah.
That's so cool. Oh my
That's
gosh.
very exciting. When was the last time you were in Panama?
Last time it was this summer, and I was
Okay.
gonna go for Thanksgiving, but I'm going for winter break instead.
Okay. All right. Very cool. But it's hard to say you're not from Panama because you've never lived there. They live there.
Yeah. The longest I've stayed there
It's
at once is like a month. So no.
That's
Yeah, I wouldn't say.
interesting. Yeah. So it's hard to say where you're from necessarily. Or do you say
Yes.
I'm from, you said Ohio, but like, is that where you identify from? I'm curious to dive into like, how you identify
No,
being from everywhere.
I love that question. Like, where do I identify with? Because I would say, like, on my VSA tag, it says Georgia because I was born there. But like, I would
Yeah.
identify with Georgia. Like, that's where a lot of my family's from. So I
Mm,
identify with Georgia a lot, but I haven't been there since I was 8. So it's like it's been a while. And then
got it.
I usually say I'm from Ohio because it's the most recent place that I lived.
Mm.
Um, and if they ask about my family, that's just a whole nother conversation about Panama and all that stuff. But I really identify the most, I feel like, with like when I lived in Washington, I lived in Seattle. Like that's probably my favorite place I lived. I did like California a lot. I don't know. I usually just default to, oh, I came here from Ohio, so I guess I'm from Ohio. But they ask me about Ohio stuff, and I can't really like speak on it that well.
Got it.
Mm.
So when you think about what you want to do in your future, now I'm kind of curious, do you see yourself wanting to continue to move in a regular pace, or do you want to go the opposite direction? Like, oh, I spent my whole childhood moving. Now I feel like I want to be in one place.
When I was growing up, I think I was really I would kind of get mad at my mom every time we'd move because it was like another time I had to start over at another school. Like I'd been to like by the time I got to my last year of high school, I went to 13 different schools. So I was
Oh, wow.
really used to being the new girl and meeting people. And I was like, wow, I can't wait to be an adult and just live in one place and never move ever again.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
now that I'm like growing into adulthood and I'm thinking about the future and my family in the future, I think that I would want them to have a similar experience moving around a lot because that really built my social skills, I feel like, and like my how I adapt to different environments, but not in the same degree as like how often I moved.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Which
Um,
location would you want to move to after graduation if you got to pick anything?
I would like to stay in California just because of like tech companies
Okay,
or
fair.
Washington, I guess, because of also tech companies. But I don't know. I'm a West Coaster. I like the West Coast.
Okay, nice.
cool. So, all of that aside, before we dive in even further, I'm sure we have plenty to talk about on the back end of the podcast. But you bring us a whole fresh new episode. What is this episode all about?
Yeah, so this episode, I decided to kind of focus on ECE because I invited some of my friends that are also ECE and also sophomores. So we never really talk about like ECE and like our expectations coming into ECE and like what it is like now. So I wanted to make it ECE expectations episode
Okay.
basically. So we kind of talked about what are like some of the misconceptions that we came into ECE with, and then how are we reflecting on that now? How have we changed? Do we still feel good about our major pick? Like, yeah, just a conversation about our major.
And before we go any further, we've been using this acronym ECE. We should
Oh,
probably tell people
yes.
what it means. Electrical and computer engineering. I think we often
Yep.
find ourselves forgetting that we use somewhat of an internal jargon a lot. And so this episode was all about electrical and computer engineering. Let's get right out of the way, hand it right back to Cecilia to talk to her friends a little bit more about the electrical computer engineering student experience here and what it's all about.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cecilia Betancourt, and I'm currently a BSA studying electrical and computer engineering here at USC. I'm a sophomore, and I'm here with a couple of my friends. If you guys like to go around and introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm a current sophomore at USC studying ECE.
Hi, I'm Talise. I'm also a sophomore studying ECE at USC. And hi, I'm Leire and I'm also a sophomore at USC studying ECE.
Hi there, it's Brooke, one of your Viterbi admission counselors with your mid-podcast message. I want to tell you about our year-round on-campus Visit Viterbi experiences. They're the best way to get to know more about our Viterbi programs. It's a 90-minute session focused on first-year applicants, and it includes an overview of our academic programs and admission process. It's led by one of our very own USC Viterbi admission counselors. So if you'd like to join us on campus, we would love to meet you. Please visit viterbi.link/events, that's VITERBI.link/events to reserve your Visit Viterbi experience. Now back to the podcast.
Thank you guys so much for joining me. So obviously this is my personal friend group because we're all sophomores studying ECE, but that's kind of the main focus of today's episode. We really wanted to talk about ECE misconceptions because I feel like coming into USC with ECE CS and CECS, it's kind of difficult to tell like what's the difference, what's the vibe for each major. So that's something that we really want to talk about since we have experience, a little bit of experience under our belts about what it's like being an ECE major. So to start off, I wanted to do a little opening question. What did you guys think ECE was going to be like when we first started, and what do you think like the main difference is now?
Okay, so I thought that ECE, when I first started, like when I got admitted to USC, I thought ECE would be a lot of math and a lot of theoretical work, and just like I thought it would be very conceptual, and I thought we would learn about like, oh, this is how a computer works, and I wasn't really sure exactly what ECE entailed. Like I didn't really know what kind of job you could get with ECE besides like nondescript engineer at tech company. And now I realize that as an ECE major, we do a lot of hands-on projects and we do a lot of math and we do a decent bit of coding and we do a lot of lab, and it's just like a bunch of different topics, but it's very applied. And now I have a better idea of what you can actually do with an ECE degree.
Okay, so we do a little bit of everything. I kind of like that. Does anyone else want to give their thoughts?
So I guess like similarly to Talise and Loki, I feel like everybody else, I generally went into ECE not really knowing what it's about, but I feel like a lot of people in high school and in general don't really know what engineering specifically can be like applied to, like in general, I would say, especially ECE. So I just went in knowing that people said it was like one of the hardest engineering majors. I low-key came in a little scared. But just as Talise said, I feel like it's a lot of like math and physics and a lot of hands-on projects that do make sense like once you're doing them. So I do feel like, yeah, it's like overall like a very interesting major.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, is there anything that you want to add?
I think adding on to what Leire was saying about like not really understanding what ECE was coming in, I agree with that a little bit. I knew I wanted to do ECE primarily because I like the problem solving aspect of engineering, and then I wanted to combine that with like working with computers and coding. So I thought ECE was like a really good mixture of that. But now that I'm here, I think ECE is different in the way that it's much more hardware and like understanding the inner workings of how a computer works, like much more than I expected we would go over. And I think that's really nice and interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, personally, I feel kind of the same. I came into ECE not really knowing what to expect, especially since engineering is kind of like, oh, it's just engineering is kind of a black box. And you see people saying that engineers don't really know what that means. But now that I'm in the ECE, I feel like it's a great mixture between hardware and software. I kind of expected, like, especially with electrical being in the name, I kind of expected a lot of, I don't know, wires. But now that I'm here, it's like circuitry and stuff. And I don't know, I really enjoy it. I think it's a really good mix between the two. And it's a personally for me, it feels like now that I'm here, it's definitely it's a better pick for myself than like CECS or CS. Moving on. Moving on to like misconceptions that are usually related with ECE. I kind of picked three big ones that I feel like would be great to talk about because I think we have little stories that we can include with them. But first of all, especially since we're kind of comparing it to CE and or CECS and CS in general, I feel like one misconception about ECE is it's a lot of coding. Do you guys think it's heavy in coding? How do you guys feel about like the balance?
I actually really like the balance. I came in thinking that I really liked coding, but now that I've done more coding, I found out that I actually do prefer working on hardware more. So the labs that I've had in classes like EE 250 and EE 109 have been a bunch of like circuitry and more hands-on projects that I've really enjoyed.
Thanks, Jessica.
So for me, part of the reason I chose ECE was because I I liked engineering, but I didn't want to write a ton of code. And so that's why I didn't want to do CS because I actually hate coding with a passion. But in ECE, like yeah, I was worried it would be a lot of coding, especially like the first ECE class that we had to take was EE 155, which is just learning C++. So I was like, oh no, now all I'm gonna do is write code. But it's really just been, yeah, we write a lot of code, but it's all like the code's goal is to make a project work or it like supplements the hardware that we're working with. So it's never just pure code. Or if it is pure code, like when we did the MATLAB labs in linear algebra, it was like there was actually a physical result we were making. It wasn't just like writing code for the sake of making the most efficient algorithm. It was like we're writing a code to make our project work. And so, yeah, I guess it's a lot of coding, but it's like fun coding.
Thanks, Talise. Leire, do you want to add anything?
Yes, actually. I think adding to what Elise was saying, I think a really good point of coding, at least in ECE, is that it's not about the coding itself, but it's more just like a pathway to do what you have to do. So I feel like most of the times that we've had to use coding, at least like in classes like 354 or 109 or 141, it's to like give like a pathway to a bigger project. And the coding itself is not that hard, I would say, when it's targeted towards like not coding itself, but like doing a project. So for example, going back to what Talise was saying about the 141 maths, it was like we have to do coding, but it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple because the emphasis of what we have to do is not actually like writing the code itself, but like we want to compare like this image with this image, and then there's like a little bit of code, but it's not like the main focus. And I feel like that is really good because for me, I also did not want to choose CS because it felt very like trapping, knowing that I would have to be coding all the time. And I feel like in ECE that is not really the case.
Yeah, I think you guys are making great points. I feel like in ECE, coding is more of a tool instead of our focus. And I feel like CS is a lot of the focus is writing programs to to complete functions. And we do write programs. I think a lot it's usually embedded and we're usually also working in conjunction with hardware. So it doesn't feel like overbearing like CS. Because I agree. I in high school really did like my intro to coding class, but I didn't really want to do it forever. So that's why I was leaning more into hardware, and I feel like ECE still has that coding aspect because I feel like a lot of us in ECE are understand coding, and it's like it's programming is very useful. So I think it's great that we have to work on that skill, especially since we can apply it to the industry very easily. But yeah, it's not overbearing. Um, do you guys want to share any of our projects that we've done that are not coding related?
I can talk about 109 project.
That's perfect.
So
for like an example of us using coding as a tool rather than just like coding for the sake of coding was in EE 109, which is Intro to Embedded Systems. We had to write code. I mean, we had to write code in the project, but the goal of the project was to basically make a speed trap. So we had two sensors, two light sensors, and we would move an object through one of the light sensors and then the other. And the goal was to determine the speed at which that object was moving, as if we were pretending like that was an actual car or something. And so we had to write a lot of code because the lab had a lot of components and it used an Arduino microcontroller. So we had to write the code that the microcontroller was running on it to like control the different light sensors and detect when an object has passed and then calculate the speed that the object is moving. And then the lab also had all sorts of other components like LEDs and rotary encoders and different other types of hardware that we had to incorporate into our lab. So like it was a lot of code, but all of the code was designed to help these individual hardware components function and then function as a group and then eventually like output the speed, which was shown as either a green light if the speed was acceptable or a red light if they were going too fast. And yeah, so it was a lot of code. Like I would say maybe 60% of the time we spent on the project was debugging and writing the software. But the whole time it was you'd write the software and then you'd run it and you get to interact with the different hardware components and the breadboard and the Arduino, and then you'd go back to the code. So it wasn't just like entirely writing code.
Yeah, Talise, I think that's a great example of like a project where we had to do coding, but it wasn't like the main focus because the final project is also a small portion of the class when you really think about it in perspective to how long the semester is. So like that we were doing a lot of coding, but at least we had like that physical interaction component that I feel like CS doesn't really have. I mean, of course we see like software on hardware, like sometimes they will use their programs like with in conjunction with hardware, but like they don't really get to interact with it and mess with it like we did. So I feel like it was a good mix for coding. Jessica and Leire, do you guys have any projects that stood out to you that weren't primarily coding focused?
Recently in EE 250 we did like a circuit design project where we use KiCad, which is like a software where we built a circuit, and then our professors are going to send that off to be manufactured, and when we get them back, we're going to be able to like solder the parts to a Raspberry Pi. So that one does not involve coding whatsoever, and it's just purely hardware basically. So that's pretty cool.
That is really cool. And do you want to explain really quickly what E250 is?
Yeah, EE250 is, I believe, distributed systems and Internet of Things. So it's a lot of kind of an introduction to like to Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and how our systems work.
Thanks, Jessica. Leire, I think you wanted to say something?
Yes. I feel like a couple come to mind. So, for example, right now I'm taking EE 202, which is an introductory class to linear circuits. And essentially, all of the labs we've had to do for the class have not involved coding whatsoever. And it is just essentially building different circuits on breadboards and just like analyzing the different signals, so like input voltages, output voltages, and then we just get to do like really cool things with them. And for example, one that comes to mind is the lab that we did this week, which involved powering a speaker with our circuit. So we had to like they gave us like the diagram and we just like construct the circuit on the protoboard, and then we have a separate circuit with a microphone. And then what we did is we pulled the speaker close to the microphone, and then we just try to like measure the signals received by the microphone on the oscilloscope. And I feel like it was really cool to see how like I guess the signals that were playing were like similar to the ones that were like inputted but not really. So like it really shows how like in theory this has to be working, but in real life it's not that simple. And then at the same time we also have like physics labs which involve a lot of hands-on like doing like soldering and just like a bunch of different things like building capacitors, for example. And I feel like that's really entertaining. Like it's really hands-on.
Thank you guys. I appreciate that. Yeah, I feel like not only did we get to talk a little bit about projects that we enjoyed, but I feel like we also covered a lot of like the beginner EE classes that we take, 109, 250, 202, and then some of the physics classes. Yeah, I feel like you start off in 155, which is our introduction to programming class, and you do programming there, but you have so many other introduction classes or introductory classes that don't rely on coding. And I feel like it's really important to kind of focus on the fact that ECE is not all coding. It's a really big mixture, and that's kind of the point of ECE, is to be kind of embedded. Thank you guys. So moving on to misconception 2, I think, as Leire mentioned in the beginning, actually, that ECE is often considered a really difficult major, and that can be kind of, I feel like, a barrier to entry, and that can kind of scare people hearing that it's hard, because who wants to go spend a bunch of money going to college and then do something really hard and then fail potentially? And I 100% get that. It's knowing something is hard is scary, and then wanting to do it and willing yourself to do it is difficult. So what do you guys think ECE is too hard? How do you feel, especially about ECE and USC? Like, and mention USC resources if you could.
So I think that for ECE, like the first thing that I tell, like people say to me when I tell them that I'm doing ECE is either that, oh my God, it must be so hard. Do you think it's hard? Or they say, oh my God, you must be so smart. And like sometimes when I'm doing my problem sets, I'm like, wait, I'm really not smart. Like, why am I doing this? But I think that ECE, especially at USC, it's really hard, but it's very manageable because there's a lot, like the major is very small. So there's not very many of us. And we all work together on a lot of the problem sets and the labs. And we also, like, ECE has a lot of resources available. So all of the professors have office hours. And since it's such a small major, there's rarely that many people at office hours. Like usually you can get some time with the professor where there's not very many other people. So you can ask whatever questions you have.
Thank you, Talise. Jessica and Leire, do you have any insights?
Okay. I wanted to add to what Talise was saying about USC. I feel like well definitely I don't think ECE is only for smart people. I would definitely say no. I mean, I think it obviously takes a lot of hard work, but I don't think that it's like only for geniuses whatsoever. I also feel like one of the really good things about USC that I didn't really know when I came in is that I feel like within our major, everybody's very driven, but there's not like a competitive environment in the sense where you like cannot ask your colleagues for input or for help. I feel like it's very teamwork in the sense that if you like do not understand anything, you can always like be with your friends, like do your homework or like do projects, and it's just like very much learning with your friends. Like I feel like the competitive environment that can be at other universities, like at least the negative aspect, is not here within USC. And then I also agree with what Elise was saying in the sense that there's like a lot of opportunities to be one-on-one with the professor. There's also like a lot of resources within Viterbi in which they can give you like particular classes for certain classes such as 202 or like 155, and you can just like reserve your spot and then just like talk to somebody who has taken the class and they can help you with it. And I feel like it's very well organized and it makes it really easy to deal with.
Thank you. I appreciate that perspective, lady. Jessica, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I agree with what Talise and Leire have both said about ECE not only being for geniuses. I don't think that's true at all, but also that USC is very good at providing support, especially like within Viterbi, the professors and the TAs are always willing and available for you to ask questions to. And I also want to emphasize that like ECE is a very challenging degree, but it doesn't come at the expense of your college experience. I think it is very doable to balance both like your academics, your clubs, and also just having fun time in college. And I think adopting that mindset of like the work hard, play hard kind of thing is really important. So you can like dedicate yourself not only to academics, but to also like spend your college exploring LA and just having fun.
Yeah, I think it's really important to not write off to not write off like difficult majors as, oh, if you're doing a hard major or if you're doing a challenging major, you're never going to get out. I know many people, including people in this call right now in my friend group, that are very social and they get the chance to go out and they get the chance to be involved in clubs. Personally, I'm involved in RPL, and even though my commitment is it can be shaky at times because definitely I definitely give more time at certain times than others. Um, I can be flexible and I still have time to participate in my hobbies. Like I love gaming and stuff like that. So I still have time to do that, even though ECE is viewed as difficult and the classwork is definitely difficult. But I also think, like Talise and Leire were talking about, within ECE, especially at USC, there are a lot of resources, and I feel like um we get the opportunity to be so connected with our professors that a lot of our professors know us like on a first name basis. And I think that says a lot about how we can ask for help and get personalized help, even in like bigger classes. Like I'm putting air quotes around that because bigger classes are like 80 people. But even in those bigger classes, professors still know you, still know what you need, and you can still get help from them. And then of course there's plenty of CPs, LAs, and TAs that can help you out for each class. So I don't think I there's so many resources that you can't fail. I mean, well, I guess you could. There's so many resources that if you try hard, you will be supported. And I think you can't let that turn you away from the major. Do you guys have any other thoughts?
Okay, so also adding to what Jessica was saying, I feel like a really good point is that um I think it really is a major in which you can balance like both the academics and the social life. And I feel like a really good thing about USC is that it's a campus that is both good at academics and at like having like a social life. Like I feel like the campus in itself, it has like a lot of things to do within, like the people are really open, like it's a really good environment. And we're also, I feel like, in a really good location, like we're in the middle of LA, so the weekend will come, we have the metro right here, and like if you want to get out of your house and like get some air, like stop studying for a bit, you literally have a million places to go. You can go to Santa Monica, you can go to a lot of places, and I just feel the fact that it's within a very like a really big area where you can do a lot of things makes it feel much less restricted. And at least for me, it is really like being able to just go anywhere, anytime has made it really more like really helpful for me to manage like my studies and like everything else.
That's a great point, Lady. Thank you. Talise or Jessica, do you have anything you want to add?
Basically, most of the ECE classes have either CPs, which are course producers, or LAs, who are lab assistants. And they basically are undergrads who took the class in the last like 1 to 3 years. So I'm currently a CP for 141, and I know Cecilia is also an LA for EE 109. But what we do is we help like supplement the TAs who are graduate students and the professor, and just offer guidance and support in the labs and in the class with the material to help students that are taking it currently, because we took it like in the last couple of years. So we have more knowledge about the subject matter than maybe some of the TAs do. So I think that that's also a useful resource, because you can get explanations from people who were just trying to learn the material only a year ago.
Yeah, thank you, Talise. That's a great point, bringing up and explaining what CPs, LAs, and TAs are, like kind of understanding the resources at USC. And if you guys are interested in learning more about what it's like being either of those or any of those, I actually have a reel on the Viterbi Admission Instagram that talks about my day in a life of an LA for E109. So check that out if you're interested. Okay, for our last misconception I kind of want to cover, I think since we're all women here, and since we are in engineering, which is typically viewed as a male-dominated field, and that is changing, but it's still kind of a male-dominated field. What do you guys think about the male to female ratio in ECE specifically? So, what do you think ECE is only for men? Kind of talk about your experiences with that, with whoever would like to start.
I can start. Uh, so one of the first things I noticed when I started ECE here at USC is that the ratio was pretty much 50-50. Like, as bad as it sounds, like I went in and I was like, oh, like there's so many girls in this class, like in the best way possible. Like there's so many girls in this class. And I feel like this is like very different from other colleges in which I know that the like male ratio in ECE is much larger than the female ratio. But I feel like at USC, I don't know what you guys think, but I feel like it's pretty balanced. Like I feel like there are a lot of girls in our class, and I feel like I've made so many friends here.
Thanks, lady. Jessica or Talise, do you have anything you want to add?
I definitely agree with Leire. Like one of the things I noticed is there's so many girls in all of the classes even compared to what I had in high school in some of the STEM classes. Like most of the engineering classes, the math classes, the physics classes, all of the STEM classes that you would typically think are filled with like men that are, I don't know, stereotypical engineers. It's really not the case. It looks more like just any normal class, not just like an engineering class, I guess. And then I would also say that like all of the people are really friendly and there's no like negative attitudes toward you being a woman in engineering. Like there's nobody ever considers that like, oh, you're a woman in engineering rather than just an engineer. Like everybody in ECE is just another ECE major who's like trying to, get through some of the more difficult classes and like enjoying all the labs and stuff. Like there's no real difference between being a woman and a man in a good way though.
Okay, Jessica, do you want to add anything?
I think Leire and Talise basically covered it all. I would say that like it makes sense that especially if you're a woman coming into ECE to feel a little intimidated by it because the general stereotype is that it is like a male-dominated field. But I would encourage like young girls who are coming into ECE to try to push past that idea. At USC especially, there are a lot of female-focused like groups like SWE, which is Society of Women Engineers, as well as a couple other more that really focus on cultivating like female bonds and like friendship between girls who are in engineering and kind of creating a community of people who look like you and who understand what you're going through, which is really helpful. And I think also what USC does really well that Talise and Leire have both mentioned already is like the ratio of female to males in our major. Because I think knowing that EC is a challenging major, it is kind of scary and kind of you feel, or at least for me personally, I did feel a bit of like imposter syndrome coming in to USC, kind of like struggling a bit in classes and not understanding things like quite as quickly as I thought my peers were understanding things. So knowing that you have like a group of people like other girls in your classes is honestly like very comforting and very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Those are all great points. I feel like from my perspective, I agree. I feel like I feel like we're not divided, males and females. I feel like we're not divided at all in within ECE. I feel like we all get along. I feel like with ECE, especially since a lot of our classes we stay together and we're a pretty small major, we already know a lot of the people in our class and we kind of stick with them through each class. And I feel kind of like I know this is so corny when everyone says it, but I kind of feel like we're like a little family. Like we're all brothers and sisters, you know what I mean? So like I feel like there's no like separation between the two. And when I was in high school in my programming class, it was actually it was completely different because I was actually the only girl in my class. And there were like 30 of us in APCS, and um it was crazy. It was weird. And one thing that I really took away from that experience was that that shouldn't happen. And girls should never feel alone. You know what I mean? I didn't feel alone in the end because a lot of the guys didn't even realize I was the only girl because they didn't really look at me any differently. But I think it's really important to have that kind of split. And I will mention that Viterbi makes it a goal to have 50-50 male and female for admissions over all majors. And that's remained true over the past couple of years. So I think it's really cool that it's 50-50 within each major as well, or at least from the ECE side, we can say that. Yeah, thank you. And then thank you, Jessica, for mentioning the organizations and opportunities for females within engineering, even though, like with SWE, which is a great organization, with a bunch of women that empower each other and help each other through, engineering is just like a little community that you can have. I also think there's a lot of like opportunities like job wise, like event wise that are geared towards women, not because women are kind of isolated in engineering, it's just to boost them up. Because I feel like in the industry, we don't see that 50-50 split. And that's obviously something we're working towards every day. And that we would love to see because I don't think industry should be defined by what the people that work within them, like what they identify as. I don't think that should like define an industry. So there's a lot of events to empower women who are going into the industry that doesn't really look the same as Viterbi and help them out. So I feel like there's not really that problem within ACE. But thank you guys so much. I really appreciate a little conversation. I think it's really important to, now that we are where we are, even though we're still pretty early in our academic journey, I think it's important to reflect on kind of what our major means to us, especially since we all kind of agreed that we came into ECE not really knowing what it was going to be like, not knowing what to expect, especially engineering as a whole, and at USC, because Talise, Leire, and I were not from the LA area, so coming into USC was a completely different experience. But yeah, thank you so much. I think it's really important to reflect on that. And I'm glad that we're all here together and that we are in EC together. But before we officially close, I wanted to pose one final question to you. If you guys could go back and give advice to your younger self, specifically about ECE, what advice would you give? So maybe yourself the summer before freshman year.
Okay, if I could go back in time and give a piece of advice to my younger self, um, I think it would be tied back to what Jessica said earlier about the imposter syndrome. I feel like partially I came here especially to like a new city, like this university, into such what is painted as such a like hard degree and a theory heavy degree. I felt like it wasn't really my place based on like like the stereotypes of the major. But now that I'm here, like everybody's normal, everybody's in the same position as you, and the major is really, now that I've had 1 year and more or less like 1.5 years of experience in this major, I would say that, well, I knew that it was going to be interesting, but it generally is like I generally find it very entertaining. And just, I would say to my younger self, like, don't worry that much. Like, everything is going to work out as it should. And just like, try it out.
Thanks, lady.
I kind of have two pieces of advice. Well, okay, what that I would give myself. My first one is like I came in as a BME major rather than ECE major, and I switched into ECE before even registering for classes. And I would tell myself to keep doing that because I think ECE is one of the most versatile majors in engineering because you can apply it to almost any topic that you want within engineering. So like we can work our RPL, we can still do like BME applications. There's a ton of different applications. So I would always keep picking ECE over other types of engineering. And then the other one I would do is that I would say I should get out of my dorm a lot more. I got caught up in like studying all the time and and trying to be super studious so that I didn't fall behind. But I think all I did was I ended up like getting stuck in a loop of like studying all the time and not like getting out and seeing the world. And then once I've started doing that this year, it's just been a whole lot easier. And I feel like my studying also goes better and classes feel more manageable, even though they're more difficult than they were last year.
Those are great pieces of advice. Jessica, do you have any advice for yourself?
Yeah, I guess I would say to my past self, kind of touching what Leire was talking about, imposter syndrome again. Just like reminding yourself that you are a capable person. Like if you're applying into USC and if you get into USC, like you're here for a reason. They chose you here to come here for a reason. And recognizing that, yeah, classes are challenging, but like everyone goes through them, everyone takes them, and that you're capable of doing well in them and like working through these difficult classes. And also, when I was coming into USC, I was considering switching from ECE to CECS. So even though I didn't, which I'm really glad with my decision of not doing so, I wouldn't be afraid of kind of exploring your options. Like you have a lot of time, and college really is like the best time to explore different majors and kind of seeing what clicks best for you and what you like to do. So I would also say that, well, I guess this wouldn't apply for my younger self, but if you are like in between majors, I would consider just like trying things out and not feeling like you're stuck in one place.
That's a really great piece of personal and general advice, Jessica. Thank you. I think if I had to give myself advice, I actually really relate because I also was thinking about switching to CECS before starting ECE. I don't know why they sent out a major change form or whatever, and I don't know why its existence, which is like maybe I need to change my major. I'm really glad I didn't, obviously, but I think my big piece of advice for myself would just be to keep going and keep the passion that I came into to USC with. I feel like I was so excited. I mean, obviously I was nervous, but I still am excited to be an EC major and I love what we learn. And I haven't hated any classes so far, which I didn't think I would be able to say, especially being 3 semesters in. But I think just keeping that passion and like, well, it's not really advice to myself. I guess I'm just telling myself to keep doing what I'm doing is kind of lame. But that's what I'm gonna pick. Um just to keep my passion and know that I made the right choice sticking in ECE because when I was applying to USC, I did so much research about majors and I just decided that ECE was the best major based on the curriculum, and I'm glad that I stuck with that. And I think that if I had to go back and I to do it again, I would do it exactly the same way, like Talise was talking about, just sticking with my guts because I feel like I'm in a position that I'm really happy with right now. So yeah, I love EC. Yeah, I love USC. Yeah. Um, but yeah, thank you so much, guys, for joining me today. I really appreciate your guys' insight. I'm glad we got to talk as friends a little bit about this because I feel like we don't really talk about the nitty-gritty of our majors and stuff like that. But yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And we're back. Thank you for that lovely episode, Cecilia. I think we have had a lot of questions, especially at the most recent open houses, about the difference between different majors and people asking what electrical engineering even involves at this campus. Because I know like different schools have different things they delve into, and the amount of hands-on experience you get is different at different schools. So it's nice that you got to cover all of that for our prospective students that are going to be watching this episode.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
When you were going through your high school experience and you were looking at colleges, how did you end up choosing electrical and computer engineering? Was it always dead set on that, or were you kind of dancing between different topics?
That's a great question. I think what I was dancing in between really was computer engineering as just computer engineering.
As an idea.
Yeah. And I was debating CS at some schools, but I was like, not too much coding. But when I got to USC and I was looking at the application and I was reading the majors, I read electrical and computer engineering, and the way that it read was like a little, it's like, oh, it's hardware and software, but it's like a little more hardware. And that's exactly what I wanted. And that I wrote about that, just saying
Yeah.
like it's sums up exactly what I want in a major, when it felt like at other schools, like they only had electrical engineering or they only had computer engineering. So I just really wanted the mix, but like with a little bit of a focus on hardware. And the way that USC presented the major, it seemed that way, and it has served that way in the classes I've
Great.
taken.
Great. And I know it's early, but is there like a dream scenario, or is there something you want to do after college with this, and where you see yourself going?
I think I really enjoy design so far. I'm in an introduction to digital circuits class. So we do a lot of state diagrams and RTL design, which is like real-time logic. Um, and I really enjoyed that. And I could see myself doing designs of like hardware components. Like, I really like playing video games. It's like I've been doing it my whole life, and I would love to contribute somehow to the gaming community. And I think it'd be
Yeah.
cool to make parts for like gaming PCs, like make new GPUs and help push that innovation. So I think it'd be cool to work at a gaming company making hardware for gamers.
What's
Very
your
cool.
favorite game to play right now?
That's a great question. I currently have been playing a lot of Terraria. I got back into it recently, but I was playing a lot of Valorant before, but that is not good for my mental health. I need a break. I need a break.
Why is that not good for your mental health, and why is something else good for your mental health?
Well, Terraria is much more chill. It's like very open world, like, oh, hang out with your friends, build stuff, fight bosses, it's chill. And then Valorant is online game with people that care a lot about what happens in the outcome of the game, and people get mad when you don't win. And it's just a little stressful. And like after a long day of class, I do not need to be stressed out in a video game. So
Sophie, are you a gamer? Do you like to play games?
Not all. I wanted to contribute to, after I asked that question, I was realizing that I had nothing to add to it. I don't think I play like a video game by myself, like unprovoked by someone else ever, which is kind of tragic, but it's okay.
Well,
that's
when have you
crazy.
played a video game? Like what circumstance creates a video game player out of you?
I think if someone else, like I'm at their house and they have a PS5 and they're like all playing, and I'll be like, okay, I'll try one game, and I suck at it and I never play again.
Got it.
Yeah.
And this is where I know nothing about this, and this is completely foreign to me. Like literally, you say these names and they sound like medications to me. Do you, like, oh, I'm on Valorant. Yeah, I
Valorant.
take
Yeah.
what's it called again?
Valorant. Yeah. Valorant.
Valorant. Yeah, I take Valorant for my back. It's a thing. What these are PC games, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay, great. And so when you like to play games, you're all PC, or is there you go across different consoles?
No, mostly PC, I think.
Mostly PC. Okay, great. Yeah, it is an entirely foreign world to me. I do not understand any of this stuff. I appreciate it. I don't know why. I don't have the patience for it at all.
Yeah,
I mean, like to me, video games are, well, see, I'm very old. Like the original Nintendo was it for me. That was basically it. I take that back. The last thing I ever owned, well, this has changed recently, but the last thing I ever owned was the Sega Genesis, which was the change from 8-bit to 16-bit computing. And so it was
Wow.
16-bit games was huge, and that was a big change. And then that fell off the planet for me until adulthood, and then we got serious and got a Wii. Like that's how serious it was in my household as adults. And my daughter has what's it called? The Switch. She has a Switch. And I've played that because that's very reminiscent. Like we can play like a Mario game or something together. But that's basically it. So yeah, I'm not a hardcore gamer. I do not understand this stuff, but I'm glad you do, and I'm glad you're there to talk about it. All right. So where are we? We are in November. Holy cow. It is what, 3 weeks till Thanksgiving. You guys get a
Yes.
little bit of a break, and then you go straight into finals.
Oh,
Is that right?
I've only thought up until Thanksgiving so far. I haven't reached the finals arc yet.
You haven't hasn't entered your mainstream chat yet.
Unfortunately, not.
Okay.
Actually, fortunately, not.
Okay, so Cecilia, you mentioned that you were thinking you're possibly going to go to Panama. Seems like a big trip just to do for Thanksgiving, but you're not doing that now. What are you guys doing for Thanksgiving? Do we have this figured out? Safia, you're relatively local, so I'm assuming you go home.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be at home. I actually have no clue what's going on yet. Usually my family tells me what our plans are for that week by now. And nothing has happened so far. So I might just be chilling out, maybe getting a head start on final studying.
Got
We'll
it.
see.
Cecilia, what about you?
I decided I was gonna go have Thanksgiving with my boyfriend's family. And he lives in the Bay, so I was gonna fly to the
Well,
Bay
that's
and hang
nice.
out with them.
Get to fly up there. That's great. Very cool. Awesome. Awesome. Well, hopefully you guys are making your way through this slog right now. I know November gets a little tough. We're kind of almost there. 3 more weeks till the break, and then another week or so for finals, and then we head off. That's it. As far as the admission world goes, there is still plenty of time to apply for fall 2025 admission should you wish to do so as a first year student. Our final application deadline is January 15th, and so you have plenty of time to figure that out. There's lots of information on our website. As always, there's ways to visit if you'd like to visit. There's a number of online and virtual events that are happening between now and then as well if you cannot visit, but you can read through all the information we have on our website, viterbiadmission.usc.edu. Other than that, thank you all for being here. We will be back next week with a whole other new episode of Viterbi Voices. See you then. Bye.